For WP4, I'd like you to consider how you're going to design your project very carefully. To start with, I'd like you to really think about what you plan to include in your project. So here are a few things that you might include, that you might think about how you want to present them within the document itself. So obviously you'll be including quotes from your own writing, quotes from professionals' writing, quotes from your interviewees, and so on. So you're going to need to have some format where you can show those quotes clearly, but you'll also be probably including at least some images in your document. So you might include images of text so you can show what the text looks like in context. So let's say your interviewee sends you a memo. You might actually want to take a screen capture of that memo to show it so we can see not only the words but also the formatting. Obviously, you might also be taking pictures of charts and graphs to include in there, any kind of screen captures of charts and graphs in order to demonstrate those as non-linguistic elements. And you might include other non-linguistic elements as well. Things like images that show up in the writing or whatever else, whatever ways that people make meaning inside of their writing for your specific field. Obviously, you'll want to include samples of the writing whenever possible. So things like those memos like I talked about earlier, but you might also want to include emails or texts or whatever else, whatever kind of writing that people do. And you might want to sample it and put it in there and think about what is the best way to include those samples within your text. You'll want to compare documents, and you might want to do this verbally within the words in the text, but you might also want to do this through images or other ways so that you can show things side by side and demonstrate very clearly how they're the same or different. Or anything else. I don't know what exactly is used within your specific field, so you might find that you want to include different kinds of things as well. But you might want to stop and think at this time, what are all of those things that I plan to include so that you can start thinking about how best you can present them. So when you're thinking about how best to present, I want you to consider a bunch of different options. Don't just think about traditional papers only, because that might not be the best format for you. You might include a video. So you might make a video of yourself talking, showing various things. You might even do a screen capture of something like a PowerPoint like I'm doing right here. It's relatively easy to do. You can do it through websites like Screencast-O-Matic, where you can do it for free, or you can do it through programs like Filmora or other video editing software. I'm doing it through Filmora right now, and you're welcome to do it through whatever you have available to you. If you're showing a lot of images and sample text, using video makes a lot of sense. You might also consider making a website instead of using a traditional text. It'll make it easier to include a bunch of images and examples, and if that's what you want to do. You can even include things like PDFs on a website. So there's a bunch of free options like Wix, Weebly, or WordPress, just to name a few, where you can make websites relatively simply and include elements like images or PDFs if that's something that you want to do. You might even consider using something like an infographic. So if you're not familiar with what that is, Google search it real quick. I think that you probably actually have seen them a lot of times and not necessarily known what the word is. There are a few websites where these are really easy to make. Someplace like Canva or Pictochart is a good option. If you are doing a traditional paper, I do suggest you consider a few things when you're thinking about how to include additional content besides the text itself. Make sure that what you're including is relevant. Make sure it's near the text where you're talking about it, and make sure that it's referenced directly in the text. So let me show you what I'm talking about with this. Here's a very simple sample project that I did where I just started writing about a topic and I included a few images to demonstrate it. What I'm doing here is making sure that my image is relevant to the point that I'm making, that it's nearby the place where I'm referring to it, and that it's referenced directly in the text. So in this case, it is. So I have a piece here that's showing me that the political flair is a part of the site. I mention it right here. I explain it clearly. I refer to it as the political thing so we know exactly what I'm talking about. So it is relevant. It's also nearby this content, and it's referenced directly in the text. It says right here, as you can see in the right. That's what I'm talking about. So we have this relevant image nearby where I'm referring to it, and I reference it directly. That's what I'm looking for if you do decide to use a traditional paper. So that's what I mean when I say it's relevant, near the text, and referenced. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, please just let me know. You can ask me in the questions forum or send me an email.